Hi everyone. Today's Tech Talk, DevOps Edition, is focused on how to increase trace cardinality with OpenTelemetry. Tech Talks are a series of short webinars that are deep dives for technical practitioners. I value your time today, and I'm excited to share with you these best practices so that you can leverage them in your daily role. My name is Jonathan Campos, and I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager focused on observability. And I'm excited to be here with you on today's Tech Talk. Let's get started. Today we're going to talk a bit about observability and OpenTelemetry. We'll also get into on what is cardinality and why increasing trace cardinality is better for troubleshooting. We'll also get into a demo on how to increase trace cardinality for better troubleshooting. And then we'll cover additional resources available to help you take advantage of your observability journey. So what is observability? Observability really helps us answer questions like, what characteristics did the queries that timed out at 500 milliseconds share in common? Service versions, browser plugins, there could be many different things when we're dealing with distributed systems. Really, monitoring isn't just cutting it anymore. We really need to understand exactly what's going on, and with distributed systems, this can become a bit of a headache. Instrumentation really just produces the data, and querying that data answers your questions, and you'll send that data to a backend like Splunk. Now, one thing to factor in is that telemetry aids observability. Telemetry data isn't observability itself, and it's important to note that instrumentation code is exactly how we get telemetry. And that telemetry data can include things like traces, logs, and/or metrics. So it's important to factor that in. And the OpenTelemetry collector is exactly how we do that. It's a vendor-agnostic implementation on how we receive, process, and export telemetry data. And we do that by collecting this data, and we use a single binary that can be deployed in an agent configuration or a gateway configuration. Now, the OpenTelemetry collector includes several components that we have to be aware of when it comes to its configuration. Starting with receivers, which is how we get data in, and the receivers can be push or pull based. We also have processors, which is what we do with the received data. Here's where we'll interact by adding span tags, which we're going to talk about also. We also have exporters, which is where we send the received data, and exporters can also be push or pull based. We typically export this data to solutions like Splunk or Prometheus. And then extensions, which provide capabilities on top of the primary function of the collector. This is where you'll implement something like a health check to make sure that your collector is up and running. So what is cardinality? Cardinality is the number of unique values within a data type. It's really the crossing of keys and values. For example, if we take a look at a region, that pretty much represents low cardinality since we typically do not have many within our cloud providers. Now, when we look at a customer ID, that's definitely high cardinality. Why? Because each of the customer IDs represent a different value within our data type. Now, why increase trace cardinality for better troubleshooting? Well, it's simple. We better understand our applications, and we get answers to questions like, what deployed version is the microservice that we're running? Or what region is this workload deployed on? This increases our visibility of where exactly our application workloads are running and gives us perspective to where our customers might be affected. In essence, we really just narrow down exactly what is going on and why. Adding tag spans ultimately help us understand our telemetry. And these tags are key value pairs of data associated with recorded measurements to provide you with contextual information, distinguish and group these metrics during analysis and inspection. So you can also create your own attribute or a key value pair so that really the information you know you'll need to understand your system is available to you. Take a look at some of these examples. We have DB type like Cassandra or a DB URL like MySQL, net transport like IP.tcp, and so on. These are great examples to really help you understand your workloads. Now let's take a look at the configuration example of the OpenTelemetry collector. We'll essentially identify these added span tags in an auto-instrumented application within the processors section. Since we don't necessarily want to change the code, we can add these processors to add these key value pairs to help us understand our workloads. And those processors, they're identified in green. We'll define them on the top part of the configuration, and then on the bottom, we'll go ahead and enable them within the service pipeline. And we can do that for traces, and we can do that for logs as well, to take advantage of the related content to correlate exactly what's going on with our applications. Now let's take a look at a demo where I'll quickly walk you through how adding tags can help you quickly discover more about your application metrics. So here we have the default configuration with a few minor changes. This is agent_config.yaml. This is the configuration file that you typically get when you deploy the Splunk distribution of the OpenTelemetry collector. And you can see here that I've added 2 attributes processors. So this is our processors definition section here. And we have the resource add environment. And for the attributes, we're going to go ahead and insert the value for the deployment environment. This will go ahead and identify the environment that our workloads are deployed to. And then, of course, we have the attributes new environment where we'll go ahead and add the version of the actual workloads that we're using. So now when we inspect our traces, we'll see that all of our spans have the version number of our workloads and are associated to the TechTalk environment. All right, so let's see what the environment looks like when we don't add these particular span tags. If we go into APM, and once in APM, we click on Explore, we can see in the dynamic service map here that our environment is set to unknown. So we don't necessarily know where this environment has been deployed. And if we quickly take a look at our traces here, we can see that we have tons of traces coming in through these particular microservices. And if we click on one of these traces to actually view the span, we can clearly see that there's no version number, there's no deployment environment. We simply have some of the tags that are automatically included with the Splunk distribution of the OpenTelemetry collector. And you can see we have things like the HTTP flavor, the HTTP host, and so on and so forth. And this happens to be an auto-instrumented Node.js application that we've just deployed, a sample application. So you can see that we do have some pretty good information here by default, but we want to add more information just to really understand this microservice and really what the version number is and what environment it has been deployed to. So in order to make this happen, what we'll do is we'll go here to our sandbox machine, and you can see that I'm in etc hotel collector, and this happens to house all of our configuration files. What I've done is I've actually copied that configuration file that you guys previously saw here that contains these particular processors that we've added. And then I've also went ahead and defined these attributes here for our pipeline, for our traces. And you can see those 2 here. And you can see them as well for our logs here. Now what we'll go ahead and do is we'll apply this configuration, and it's that simple. We'll go ahead and restart the Splunk OpenTelemetry collector, and in an instance, we'll go ahead and have these particular added span tags associated with our environment. And we'll be able to create some metric sets, and we'll be able to easily see those on Tag Spotlight and throughout Splunk APM. So let's take a look. So we'll go ahead and just rename the agent_config.yaml file. That's the file that I'm currently using right now that doesn't have the environment information or the version information. And we'll just call this agent_config.yaml.old. In this case, just so that way we can go ahead and, let's go ahead and add a sudo here. And then once I type my password in, we can see that that file has been renamed, and that's right here. Now we'll go ahead and we'll rename the agent_config.yaml.tags to agent_config.yaml. And then let's add that sudo here. All right, let's clear the screen and let's take a look. And now we have that agent config.yaml there. And let's do a quick cat just to make sure that we can see that that is the correct file. And that in fact it is. There's my resource attributes, my processors in place for the add environment and new environment here. And our definitions are right here as well. So that is the correct file. So the next step here is to go ahead and restart the Splunk OpenTelemetry collector. We'll give that a quick restart. We'll punch in our password here. And let's go ahead and confirm that the service is in fact running. All right, so it looks good. It looks like it's actively running. No issues there. All right, let's go ahead and clear the screen, and we'll just wait a few seconds here so that way we can go ahead and see this information get populated within our traces. All right, so it's been a few minutes here. So let's go ahead and check out Splunk APM here. And we can see that we do still have unknown, but we also now have Tech Talk Environment 1. And again, that reflects that added span tag that we just added when we modified the configuration. We can go here and unselect unknown here, since we now know that this environment is associated with our Tech Talk environment. And we're now actively receiving traces with that deployment tag now added in the environment. Let's go ahead and take a look at our traces. So if we go into our traces, we can see 1741 here. So these are some of the recent traces that we've received here in Splunk APM. This is our backend that the OpenTelemetry collector is sending data to. And we'll click on this and let's go ahead and take a look at the span. And we can clearly see here that the version number of this particular microservice is now indicated. So we now know that this is version number 2.0.1. And we also know that it's associated with the deployment environment, Tech Talk environment. So how does this help us here in Splunk APM? Well, the great thing about this is that if we go into Splunk APM, we can leverage our dependency map to see clearly, our dynamic dependency map to see the microservices and how they're working with one another. And we can also use Tag Spotlight to kind of get a quick overview of exactly how these particular microservices are running. If we go over to tags, we can see that the deployment environment is automatically indexed for you. And you can see that I want to see everything that's associated with that environment, but you don't have any visual analysis to be able to see that because we need to include this tag as part of a metric set. We can easily see all of our tags, all of our traces that are associated with that environment. And of course, we can go in here and we can see easily that this particular trace and this particular span right here is in fact associated with the Tech Talk environment. Now, if we go over to our hamburger menu and we go over to our organization settings and we go to our organization overview, we can go over to our metric sets configuration here. And then what we can go ahead and do is we can add a new metric set. We'll go ahead and set this to global so that it associates the span tag with the entire trace. And we'll go ahead and choose, how about version? And then we'll click Start Analysis, and this will give us a breakdown of the cardinality that's associated with this particular span tag. And then we can go ahead and add another if we choose to, once we accept the metric set configuration and we understand the cardinality associated with it. So we'll go ahead and add a new metric set. We'll go ahead and set global. We'll go over to our deployment environment. And we'll go ahead and say Start Analysis. This will tell us the cardinality involved. And this is there for information associated with your entitlement, so you're aware of the cardinality involved with adding this custom metric set. So we'll go ahead and hit Enable this metric set, and we can now leverage some of the great tools that are associated with Splunk APM to better understand our workloads. And you can see that, of course, we do include some built-in metric sets like endpoint and operation and HTTP method and kind of the particular call. So let's take a look at APM again. And we'll go over to our dependency map once again. And we of course have our environment here, but let's go back into Tag Spotlight. So now that we're here in Tag Spotlight, we can go ahead and now see that these two particular added span tags are now indexed. So we can choose deployment environment, and we can go ahead and say Tech Talk environment, and we can see that information. And of course, we do have to wait for everything to get populated here, since we just made that change. But as you can see here from the demonstration, that in the last 15 minutes, we don't have anything. But if we change that down to the last 5 minutes, and we go over to version, let's try version here, version 2.1, we can clearly see that we now have this information because of course we are now receiving some spans or some traces here rather with this information. So you can see that kind of indexed down here for us. So let's try that again. Let's go to deployment environment. Let's say Tech Talk environment. And there we go. We can now see that we do have information just associated with this environment. This concludes this demo. So you can clearly see how adding tags can really help with respect to your troubleshooting. Thank you so much for attending today's Tech Talk. I really hope you enjoyed that demo. Before we wrap things up, I want to quickly share the resources available to you to continue your journey with observability. You will receive these assets in a follow-up email as well as the recording. Don't forget that we also have an incredible community of Splunk users on our community site. You can search the answers section on OpenTelemetry and continue the conversation for this talk within the discussion section called Tech Talks. Here you'll find additional resources as well as Splunk ideas, where you can submit new product enhancements or vote for current ideas from other customers. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to join us today. Be sure to tune in for future Tech Talks. Now let's open it up for Q&A.